Hi there, Johnny here from johnnylipshamstudios.co.uk and welcome back. I apologise, it's been a bit long since I've done a video. I've been quite unwell. I've had a bit of a virus that totally floored me for a good couple of weeks, and then pretty much on the back of that I had dental surgery as well, which also floored me. So it's not been great the last 3 or so weeks, but I'm very glad to be back, and today we're going to be looking at probably the single most important mixing tip I think I have, and that is the use of this button here. I think I've talked about this a little bit before in passing. This is the mono button, which is fantastic in Studio One that it has one. In fact, it has two. It has one here and one here up on the master channel as well, the master bus. Now, the great thing about mono is, although for the most part, music since probably the 60s, I would say, late 60s maybe, has mostly been produced in stereo. So we have stereo records, stereo amplifiers, and stereo speakers. So we listen to a lot of music in stereo, obviously. And that's how most music is produced, which is fantastic. However, mixing in mono is really, really important, because what it does is it helps you to genuinely separate the elements of your mix. So whether you have a big mix like a big band or an orchestra, or whether you have a small one like I have here, you still want to ensure that you get genuine separation between each of the elements of your mix. Mixing in mono kind of forces you to do that by using EQ and compression, rather than just going, oh, I will just pan this one out hard left and I'll pan this other element out hard right. That way they won't be conflicting with each other because they're on opposite sides of the stereo field. And sitting in your mix position in your studio, that sounds fine. However, when your completed mix is put onto a CD and then you play it somewhere, let's say on your home stereo, for example, in your lounge, you're not going to be sitting in the sweet spot between your two speakers. Nobody does that. When you put music on in your stereo, you are then moving around your house. So you're not going to be in the perfect, the apex of that asymmetrical triangle, which is the best listening position. Nobody sits there. So you're going to be about doing different things. So ultimately, what is going to happen is the acoustics of your room, plus where you are positioned in your room, is going to make the stereo mix collapse to mono automatically. The same would be true if you're in a restaurant and you're listening to music over the PA in the restaurant. Same thing. You're not going to be positioned between the speakers in that perfect sweet spot. Your table might be located right in front of the left-hand speaker, or it might be at the back, off-center of the restaurant. You never know. And essentially what's going to happen is it's going to get collapsed to mono. So if your mix, excuse me, if the elements of your mix start to fold in on themselves and get lost when you hit that mono button, then you still have more work to do. So that's what we're going to look at today, mixing in mono. There's a lot of debate over this issue, and there are some people that just like, well, we listen to music in stereo, therefore we should mix in stereo. Well, there's a large part to which I agree with that. Ultimately, yes, when I finish my mix, I finish it in stereo. But the vast majority of EQ and compression moves that I do in a mix are done in mono, so that I can get that genuine separation. And then when I have that and I listen to the mix in mono and it sounds great and I can hear each individual element, Then I will hit this button once again and flip it back to stereo. And all the panning that I have already done in my static mix, because that's where I start. I start with a static mix where I've covered this in my approach to a mix video, so you can go and watch that. But briefly, I will set basic levels. I'll just run the song on a loop, and I will set levels using the channel faders, and then I will pan the elements until I get something that sounds really good. And then, once I have that and it sounds good, then I hit this mono button, and that's when I get to work on EQ and compression on my buses. And then I will do any individual EQ and compression moves on individual tracks if it's necessary. In this case, I had to do a little bit to get the individual elements to separate out. So once I have completed that part and the mix sounds fantastic in mono, as I've said, then I hit the stereo button, and all the panning that I did in the first instance is enhanced by the fact that the separation has been achieved by EQ and compression, as well as the panning moves that I did in my static mix. Now I might feel, hey, you know what, maybe that's panned a little bit too wide, and I will make some final tweaks and final adjustments. Or, when I go back out to stereo, maybe I will find that there's a particular frequency in a particular track that really bothers me, and so I will go and adjust that. So let's, I think I'll stop talking at this point, and we will listen to this song. I'm going to play it through a section of it, not the whole thing. I'm going to play a section of it in stereo, and then I'm going to collapse it to mono, and we can compare the two. Okay, this is a completed mix. Okay. So hopefully what we should find is the difference between the mono and the stereo is not that great, other than the width. Okay, so that's what we're listening for. So let's play it through in stereo first.
Down the street, the dogs are barking, and the days are getting dark. As the night comes in a falling, the dogs will lose their bark, and the silent night will shatter from the sounds inside my mind. Yes, I'm just one too many mornings and 1,000 miles behind. From the crossroads of my doorstep, my eyes, they start to fade.
Okay, so there we have it in stereo. Sounds nice. Sounds particularly good when the percussion is in, and we have the shaker on the right hand side. Gives it a nice bit of width, and the backing vocals coming in on the left hand side, again providing a nice little bit of width, and it's out of the way of the lead vocal. So how are all those panned elements going to work together when we collapse it to mono? Let's have a listen. Hit the mono button. Here we go.
Down the street, the dogs are barking, and the days are getting dark. As the night comes in a falling, the dogs will lose their bark, and the silent night will shatter from the sounds inside my mind. Yes, I'm just one too many mornings and 1,000 miles behind. From the crossroads of my doorstep, my eyes, they start to fade.
Okay, so hopefully what we noticed there was that you could still hear every element of the mix, albeit this is a small mix. There's not a whole bunch of instruments. I mean, basically we have a lead vocal, a backing vocal, a single acoustic guitar. Don't be deceived by these two mandolin tracks. Basically, they are one instrument. I just chose to pan the second mandolin solo at the end of the song. So we have lead vocal, backing vocal, acoustic guitar, mandolin, fretless bass, brushes on a box, and a shaker that my son made. And that's it. And I've routed everything to buses, even individual tracks. I route to buses these days, and this is where the bulk of the mix is done, over here. And little bits over here where needed. So hopefully all we noticed there is that the width of the mix was gone, but every element was still present and clear. That is what you are aiming to achieve when you are in mono. So at this point, having got to this point in my mix, I then flip it out to stereo and I listen through the song in stereo, and I'm looking for elements that are still not perfect, because after the mono mixing phase I'm in stereo and I'm looking to finesse the mix to get each element to sound absolutely polished. And I'll just loop the song, I'll listen to it, I'll note down things on a piece of paper that I think need dealt with, and then I will go and make those changes. Then I'll play the song through again, and I'll do this a couple of times until my little list is down to nothing, and then I will consider my mix complete. So that's how I mix in mono, and I would definitely 100% advocate that you mix in mono for a good portion of your mix, even though your ultimate final mix down that you send to your client is going to be stereo. That's immaterial. You're using mono to help you get separation of your elements. That's it. Your final mix is not going to be a mono mix. It's going to be a stereo mix. But that section of your mix, after you've done your static mix with volume, faders and panning, in my opinion, should be done in mono. And then your sweetening phase, where you go into using delays and reverbs and that kind of thing, should all be done in stereo, particularly if you have in mind to use stereo effects. No good using stereo effects when you're mixing in mono. However, I would still advise that once you've put in your stereo effects, that you collapse it to mono to check that in mono those stereo effects are not going to clutter up the mix or create any muddiness or anything. And if they are, if that's what you find happens, that you get some added low range or mid-range mud as a result of your stereo effects, or you get some clutter, then what I suggest is you go to your effects channels and you put in an EQ, find that area of mud in the low end, use a high-pass filter or something like that to roll it off. I pretty much high-pass filter all of my effects, and I've shown that in my ambient effects videos, so go check those out. Anyway, that I think is going to be it. Mixing in mono, I think, is vital to getting a really good balanced mix. There is debate on this issue, so feel free to leave a comment below this video with your opinion, whether you agree with me or disagree with me. It would be great to start a discussion on mixing in mono and how valuable or not you may find it. I hope you learned something from this. Take my opinion for what it is, which is just my opinion. It's just my view. There's lots of mix engineers that don't even mix in mono. There's some great mix engineers that don't mix in mono. And there's some terrific, great mix engineers that do. So it's a little bit swings and roundabouts. It's kind of what works for you and what works for your clients, ultimately. So there we have it. Until next time, I'll see you on the next video.